Hello, and welcome back to the Onward Shift Podcast. Today, we're extremely fortunate to have a guest with us who is an inspirational and motivational talker. Clive, how are you today?
I'm really good, Vish. It's really good to be here. Great to see you again, and thank you very much for welcoming me onto your podcast, mate.
Mate, I'm so excited to hear your story, hear what you do. I've got a glimpse of it, but I want to know the nitty-gritty stuff today. So, where should we start? Should we start from your upbringing? Should we start with your family? Should we start with your work? Where do you want to kick things off with?
Well, it always comes natural to me to start with my family because they're the thing that it sounds corny, but they are the most important thing in my life. But particularly my wife, she's integral to why I'm sitting here talking to you today. So it's not just because I'm looking for brownie points, it's real. So I've known my wife since we were both about 12 years old. So we know each other's families, etc. We've been married for just over 29 years. And strap yourself in for this bit, mate. We have 4 sons that range from 34 down to 18. And we have 4 amazing grandchildren. So it's a riot, Vish. But what a blessing. I mean, through the story, I'll share it all with you. But I've realised at many times in my life, but particularly since things got a little bit sideways, that it's a blessing that not everybody's got, Vish. Not everybody has got that network of love and support and craziness that I've got. It's not lost on me at all.
Wow. But honestly, Clive, you don't look old enough to be a granddad. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
The money's in the post, Vish, but I was born in 1970, and my wife was born 6 months earlier in 1969. So I'm definitely a boy toy. She pursued me for all this time, and I crumbled in the end. But
mate, we both know that's not true. We both know it was the other way around.
Fair cop. That's absolute rubbish, but it sounds good when I say it. But no, she's not. She's the matriarch of the wider family as well, not just the family in this house. She's a force of nature, mate. So yeah, that is my bedrock, really. And I'd been in the Royal Air Force. I did 3 years as an armourer when I first left school. And then I did a couple of other things, but then I spent almost 20 years in the Ministry of Defence, and I worked in industrial relations. So, yeah, I'm a people person, always have been. Red hair, big gob, ideal really for talking to people and, representing them and going to tribunals and doing different things. So a really wonderful, challenging, engaging career, really, really good. So that took me. There was a few medical challenges along the way. That I had a brain hemorrhage when I was born, which was a terrible start, particularly obviously for my parents. I've had migraines for most of my adult life, and I also had a stroke at home when I was 37, which was completely out of the blue, and I discovered that it was because I'd got a hole in my heart. So I had all that repaired. I obviously got away with it. It was one of those moments. Yeah, there's been a few things before this meaty story really started.
Wait, hold on. So that wasn't the meaty story, that you had a hole in your heart?
No.
Blimey, Clive. What am I in for today? My God.
Well, I don't know how long you've got, but this could be a long one. But mate, no, it was a challenging time. We learned an awful lot as a family because it was a medical sort of crisis that's obviously close to home. We were all affected by it. But it's something that could have been really life-changing and detrimental, and wasn't. It was, the clot in my brain, although it lodged and, but it dissolved before surgery. The surgery that I had to close the hole in my heart was completely successful. It hasn't got a shelf life or anything like that. It fixed the problem, and yeah, it's in my rearview mirror big time. So, but as a family,
how do you fix a hole in your heart? I've never heard of anything like that in my 31 years of life. I've never heard anyone say they have a hole in their heart. Like what? How does that happen? What's
Yeah,
the
it's
solution?
no, it's a good question. It transpires that you can have a tiny hole and it's right in the center of your heart, and
Oh, wow.
it's a defect from birth when you separate from your mom, the umbilical cord, and everything else. And it might be 1-2 mil, and you'll never know anything about it. It won't cause you any problems, but it's very common. However, you'll understand slowly but surely, I don't do anything by half. So they discovered when they were finding out how on earth did I have this stroke, I'd actually got a 12 millimeter hole right in the center of my heart. And, I'd been in the RAF, as I said. I'd done a little bit of novice level boxing. I was relatively fit. Didn't have any idea that there was an issue with my ticker. Never gave me any issues at all. So it was a real bolt from the blue. But what they do, Vish, and it's not open heart, it's all through keyhole. It's an unbelievable procedure that they put a 14 millimeter device right into the center of my heart, and it's almost like cufflinks. So they go over each side, and then it fuses. And then over a period of time, obviously your body accepts it. So, you have palpitations for a couple of months and you're on different blood thinners and things. But no, it's an incredible procedure, and it's fixed it totally.
Didn't even know that existed. This just shows how naive we all are to what's going on around the world and how we can fix the human body. It's just absolutely phenomenal, isn't it? It's just wow.
It's bonkers, isn't it? Isn't it
Yeah.
amazing? And that was in 2009, I think, when I had that done. It was 2007 when it happened, because Alfie was on I was on my paternity leave, so I know when it was. But yeah, it's incredible. It's and we're lucky, aren't we? And obviously, medicine's progressing at such an alarming rate that they can fix things in such a wonderful way. So that happened, and then, but fast forward to about 2018, I lost my mom. Sorry, first I lost my dad. He had Parkinson's disease, and that was just torturous for everybody for obvious reasons. My
So sorry,
father-in-law.
what is Parkinson's disease for people who don't know what that is?
It's a neurological disorder, and it's a degenerative disorder, and it basically robs you of the control of your muscles, your immune system, and it affects people in such different ways as most neurological disorders do. It can be shudders, tremors, uncontrollable shaking. It affects, your cognitive abilities. And with my dad, it was he'd always been really fit. He'd never even caught a cold. I never knew him ever even go to the doctors. And it wasn't long after he'd retired, and he started to get a few symptoms, and his gait, as he walked, was slightly changing. But there's obviously tests that they can do, and they diagnosed it. But it ravaged him, Vish. It completely took his independence, both physically and mentally. My mum and dad got divorced when I was 10, but he had a partner of 35 years, and incredible how he didn't have to go into hospital. He was looked after at home right to the end. So, but yeah, it's an awful disease. So we had that to deal with, and around that time we lost my father-in-law to lung cancer, and again, no, we weren't expecting it. There was no symptoms. We actually took him to the appointment thinking he'd got a bad back, but it was a tumor, and the primary problem was his lungs. So it was a real tough 2 years there. But, fast forwarding very slightly, I was experiencing a bit of mild weakness in my own left side, and particularly down my leg. I was seeing a neurologist every 6 months about the headaches. I mentioned it to the doctor, and I had all manner of tests, physical, scans, etc., to see if there was a physical issue or a trapped nerve. And again, long story short, he said you need to mention it to the neurologist, which I did, and he tracked the symptoms. And a bit frustrating. And people out there that are listening to this will understand, who've been in similar positions, when you're waiting to put a label on something, you're waiting for a diagnosis, even if it's something that's not affecting your life, you still need to know. And I think it really helps us all if we know what we're up against. Then you can deal with it and face it. It's when your imagination can take over when you don't know what you're looking at. So it was a bit frustrating for a few months, but he was doing his job and he was eliminating all these different things. until he eventually said, Clive, I'm sending you to Oxford. And I said, okay, that's no problem, but why Oxford? And he said, well, it's the Centre of Excellence for Motor Neurone Disease. And it went over my head a bit, Vish, and I thought Stephen Hawking. I don't know really, but I did have the presence of mind to say to him, "Are you sending me because you think I've got MND, or is it because you don't know?" And he said, "Oh no, it's because I think you have, and you must understand that if you have, there is no treatment." And out I went, and I thought, okay,
Sorry,
well,
what did you actually just say there? Was it motor neuron?
it's motor neurone disease, so.
What
It
is that?
is it is exactly what Stephen Hawking had. It's what some of the incredible heroes, sporting heroes, quite recently have had. Rob Burrows and Doddy Weir and people like that have raised loads of money for it before their passing. And it is a degenerative neurological disease. They have absolutely no idea why or how. It's just bad luck. But basically, the motor sensors, the motor neuron in the center of your brain, the neurons start to die off very, very slowly. And what that does, Vish, it stops the signal from your brain reaching your muscles. So, and the tragedy, Vish, here is that if it's aggressive, it stays aggressive. They cannot slow it down. But conversely, if it's slow, and mine is very slow, that it doesn't speed up. So I wear metal splints at the bottom of my legs, so they do the job of my calf and my ankles and my feet to keep me stable. I'm slightly weaker on the left side than I am on the right, and my face sometimes gets tired and stuff. But Vish, I'm moaning. I'm flying. I am absolutely flying, and it clearly is extremely slow. I go every it used to be 6 months to Oxford. I go now probably every year, and they track it and this, that, and the other. But there's no other treatment. The trials are all based around people that have got it aggressively, which is totally understandable. And I just deal with it. And we as a family, we adapt. It's never been a taboo subject. So when my wife and we went to Oxford, and of course, they'd got 2 years almost worth of evidence in front of them, Vish. All the nerve study tests and everything had already been done. So it didn't take them very long to say, right, I'm sorry to tell you that you've got motor neuron disease. But, you take that away and you think, right, okay, what do we do now? How do me and Vic even start talking about this? This is the girl I've known since I was 12 that's so much tougher than me, but she took, it was really difficult for her, but she did what she does and she took control of the communication. There was no any silly big announcement. She just did it, in a sensible order at a sensible time when it was appropriate. We had to be delicate with the younger child, obviously, Alfie, because he was too young at the time, but the others were. So it's never been a taboo subject. If they want to talk to me about it, brilliant. If they don't, they don't. But it stood us good as a family to be able to talk and be open. And if I go for tests or when I needed the second splint or whatever, we talk about it. Everybody knows. So yeah, it was a difficult time, Vish, and it's whilst it's a challenge. I come out of those appointments in Oxford, I see a lot of poorly people, and I come out of there feeling grateful. And it's not false, it's not toxic. I think, well, I'm walking out of here, I'm getting in my car, and I'm going home. And that is genuinely how I see it. But
So
then,
Clive,
yes, go on.
when you found out initially, did you not feel like scared and worried and like what? How did you feel the moment you were like, this is it, this is something that I've definitely got now?
Yeah. It would. If I'm honest, and this is going to sound like I'm martyring myself, and it's very vivid. It was like it was yesterday. All I could see was Vic, because if I'm honest, we didn't go there with any expectations. It's not like anybody had said, look, you're going, but you know the answer already. And I know what the neurologist had said, but I didn't have the best relationship with him. He had no empathy, really. He wasn't the best sort of consultant. So if I'm honest, I probably just thought that it was just going to be another test and we were going to move on to the next thing. So Vicky was my absolute focus from the minute we heard for a number of weeks afterwards. and also the level of support, both physical, and mental, that you get from these people and from the MND Association. It's so good because it's not oppressive. It's not throw loads of pamphlets at you, and then they're so good at their job that it took a while for me to actually stop and think, right, okay, I have actually got motor neurone disease. And I did, and I was low for a while, and this is going to sound a bit strange, I was probably more visibly physically affected by it for the first few weeks than I am now, because it really made me think, well, what's the point now, really? It was starting to defeat me. But as I said, the level of support that I've got and the love, we genuinely, as a family, we meet everything head on, and we think, okay, what can I do? Okay, so we know it's slow. I'll take that. And how strong do I feel today? Because I could have had this for a couple of years. Well, I feel great, actually. I feel confident. I feel good. So I'll take that. And it's all these little small wins that we do together, and collectively that helped our frame of mind.
Sorry, mate. So, Clive, how do you create that culture within your family to be so tight knit, have these open, difficult conversations? Because so many families struggle with that.
Well, some of it is a bit of luck, because both my wife and I are exactly the same. So our outlook in terms of communicating is the same. I think there's a bit of it comes that because my dad he was a guy that was born in 1937. You just do not show your feelings. You don't talk about your feelings, as a result of his upbringing. So I was brought up very much by, do as I say, not as I do. Wonderful man, loved us all very much. A really decent human being, but emotionally he was completely void. He didn't show emotions at all, and there were no sort of conversations or chats like that about anything outside of just the normal daily stuff. So I think as I saw, let's be honest, the downside of that as I grew up, I was very determined and very clear that if I ever were to have my own family, or lucky enough to have my own family, I would be completely the opposite. So, I have absolutely no issues at all telling them, how much I love them all the time. And of course I expect it back. Of course I do. And I get it back. So
I
it's a
love that.
mixture. It's a mixture of things, and they're the same, So I'm blessed that they still want to come here and see us and spend time with us. But yeah, I think those are the two reasons, really, Vish.
Wow. I love that, because I think a lot of people from their childhood would then project that onto their family that they have. So it sounds as if you've done a complete 180 and gone, that's not really worked. And here I am today trying something different. And it seems like it's worked exceptionally well for you.
No, thank you. Yeah.
What words of encouragement could you give families who do want to learn how to speak more openly? What could you say to them to kind of give them that courage to do that?
I think we need to remind ourselves very, regularly that with your loved ones, that word love is really, really important and powerful. And we're all different. We all show things differently. We receive things differently. But ultimately, amongst your family, there's love, even in difficult situations. So to nourish that is the foundation that you've got. And some of us aren't always aware of it. But that, if we work on it, and if we consider, hang on a minute, this person loves me and I love them. So based on that, I can actually share more than perhaps I think I can. And when you start that, and you start that critical situation conversation, you're often very surprised what you get back, and you're very surprised. Oh, well, actually, they were willing to talk as well, and it might not happen straight away, but I think the fact that I remind myself all the time, Vish, that I love and I am loved. Now, it's not that long ago. I was far too big and cool to come out with a statement like that, but it's true, and it nourishes me every day. So I think when you've got that in your life with somebody, no matter how distant you feel, and no matter you might not have these conversations, if I'd have been wiser, if I'd have been a bit more mature when my dad was around, I might have been able to stimulate some of these conversations. And as he got older, obviously before he was poorly, the relationship might have changed, as he got older and as I got older, but it wasn't to be. But I've learned from it. So I would say to anybody, you can't force these things, but don't give up on them either. Don't give up on it.
I love that. So true. So true. So Clive, from what you've told me up until now, oh, blimey, what a life you've lived. From the second you came into this world up until the stage you found out you've got this illness. Is it an illness or is it a disease? What is it?
It's a disease, yeah.
It's a disease.
Yeah, it's a progressive disease. Things hadn't finished yet, and I have really stretched the in sickness and in health vows with my wife to the absolute limits, really. Because it wasn't too long. It wasn't too long after that I found out completely by accident that I'd got prostate cancer, and it was a blood test. I asked for it because I was approaching 50. I'd had absolutely no symptoms at all. But very long story short, it was a simple blood test, and that's an important message for people out there, that it's not an uncomfortable physical examination anymore. It is literally a blood test to check what's called the PSA count, and that is a prostate-specific antigen count that's in your blood. And all you're doing, Vish, when you do that, is you're checking the state of your prostate. And I personally think that us guys should be doing that from 40, no later than 45. NHS guidance says 50 onwards, but I personally think 40, 45, we should be asking for this blood test. I actually think it should be automatic, but that's another topic. But so I did that. I had biopsies, I had scans. And they said, look, your PSA count is very, very low, but because of the MND, and we want to look into it further. And thankfully, I'm actively demonstrate that being proactive and catching it early is the key, because it is curable for a lot of us. So I wanted the prostate out. They wouldn't do it because of the MND. But another important message for people, Vish, is that there's lots of other treatments out there. One that I never heard of before, and it's something that every guy should know, and it's called brachytherapy.
What's that?
Basically, so if you can't have the prostate taken out, it's quite a big operation, but it's very successful. If you can't have that done, there's brachytherapy. That means that they implant radioactive seeds into your prostate, and it kills the cancer off over a period of time. You don't have to have them taken out. It's a much smaller operation. And Vish, the success rates of this, the evidence tells people that it's as successful and as effective as removing the prostate. So, as I said, everybody should know about that option. They wouldn't do it for me again because of the MND, but I got to the point where my PSA count rate got to about 8.7, I think, which still isn't massive. But January of this year, I had treatment. So I had external beam radiotherapy treatment. So I went every day for 20 days, and I'm on quarterly hormone replacement therapy injections. And between those two treatments, it's been absolutely fantastic and hugely successful for me. So my PSA count as we sit here today is 0.08. So
what should it be? What should it be? Because I know nothing about this, which I should do, but I don't.
No, not at all. Well, I think the general guidance is that if you have your PSA count checked and it's under 3.5, possibly 4 for a normal fit guy, then you're within range, and nothing's needed. Anything over 3.5 to 4, then it doesn't mean you've got cancer at all. You could just have an enlarged prostate. For example, cyclists sometimes have an enlarged prostate and things like that. So it doesn't mean there's alarm bells, but it does mean it needs looking at and checking. And it's the responsible thing to do anyway. So for me, it's been a journey, and I've learned a lot, but it's been a successful one. So they monitor me now. I went from, after that treatment in January, I had 2-3 monthly tests, but now they'll check me every 6 months and then 12 months, and on we go. So a success story, mate. Really blessed, really lucky to have the NHS have just been fantastic with me. But at the point when I found out that I'd got it, all this other stuff had gone on as well. And I'd left the MOD. I'd started my small health and safety consultancy because I was a health and safety practitioner, and I was working within construction. So I got quite busy, and I was on the road a lot. But Vish, very, very quickly, without me realizing it, my anxiety levels, it wasn't depression for me. It wasn't, it was all about becoming anxious. And I went, within a matter of weeks, I went from being in the car a lot to being not driving at all, to being outside, to being inside, in the lounge, then into the bedroom, then under the duvet, could not see or speak to anybody, visibly shaking. The anxiety it just hit me like a steam train. It was almost like everything that had happened had just all collated in this perfect storm in such a short space of time. And perspective is our superpower, Vish. It's the key to everything. It stops our imagination taking over, and I lost it totally, lost my focus. I was so scared of the outside world. I thought the roof of my house was coming off if it was raining or if it was windy at all. I could see it happening. It was really vivid.
But Clive, where did this anxiety come from? What happened? You left your job, you managed to survive all of these illnesses, you've got everything under control. It sounds like everything in your life at this moment sounds perfect. So what happened? Where did that anxiety come from?
I think it was subconsciously, it was building up. So it was things like grief after losing my dad. I lost my mom during COVID as well. That was a year or two later, but I didn't understand grief, Fish. I'd not lost anything close to me. Things there might have been a few flags there, and they weren't that they were ignored. They just weren't recognised. So obviously the MND thing. Then there was the adapting. I had to change the car, and I had to get like an automatic, and all these daft things that they all build up. Starting your own business and trying to be busy, and everything that comes with that. I'm the main provider, so I want to make sure I get all that right. So it was all these things, and honestly, Vish, looking back, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but my patience started to get thin, my concentration was thin. I got a lot of fog in my brain. I wasn't thinking straight. I was almost getting to the point where I think I said to my wife one morning when I was about to leave early morning, I actually said to her, I don't know what I'm doing. I actually don't know what I'm doing. And that's not me. Confidence has never been a problem for me ever. So yeah, it crept up. And if you'd have said to any of my friends or any of my colleagues, Clive, do you think he'd be a candidate for having his mental health compromised? They'd say, you must be joking. Clive, he's the one that we talk to that helps us and this, that, and the other. Clive's got it all sorted kind of thing. Well, no. Life's not like that, is it? They say, we make plans and God laughs, right? We're not in control. So yeah, that got to the point, and again, this is in a matter of weeks. It didn't go on for months, where my wife had to call the crisis team. We didn't know what we were dealing with. She didn't understand it. I couldn't begin to understand it. All I could do was hide in the bed. That's all I could do. Incapable of engaging with my young son. He was still at school, and it was Vicky had to take control of absolutely everything instantly. So the crisis team was called, and they ended up coming 2 or 3 times. And in the end, I was taken into psychiatric hospital, and I was taken in, and I was there for 10 weeks. So it was, again, so much harder for my wife, but yeah, all 1 minute I was here, the next minute I wasn't. And it's a scary place, psychiatric hospital. It's very, very difficult. It probably took me a couple of weeks to really wrap my head around where I was. But I remember very, very clearly when perspective came back into my thoughts. And, Vic was sitting opposite me on a visit, and I just saw her with a lot more clarity. And I thought, hang on a minute, we're a team. We've been a team for a long time. She needs me, and I definitely need her.
Yeah.
She's here amongst all this sort of noise and a bit of chaos. It's quite intimidating. And then she's got to get in the car, and she's got to go home and do all the normal mundane stuff that most moms and wives have got to do. And then she's got to come back here and visit her husband tomorrow. And that's when perspective started to come back. So it wasn't a quick thing, but that was the start of it. And I was then eventually allowed some time outside. Then I was allowed some time at home. Then I was allowed, overnight stays. And eventually, after the 10 weeks, I came home. But Vish, okay, so I'd lost my confidence and I'd lost my income. That was obvious. But the toughest thing, I'd lost my identity. I had a real identity crisis because all these hats that I wear naturally, dad, friend, granddad, husband, all these things, I'm thinking, well, who am I now?
Mm.
Who am I now? So as much as this open communication that I've promoted and spoke about, so proudly as a family, I still know that my boys are still looking at me thinking, I don't really want to talk about that, or I don't want to upset dad with this, or I don't want to trouble him with that. So it was a process, and it was a massive learning curve. And I went to this. I'd go to the supermarket with Vic. I couldn't drive. They took my license off me for a while, and I'd think everybody in there was staring at me, and of
Mm.
course they were. But it was in my head. It was all eyes on Clive, and I had to get out there pretty quick. I couldn't work through it. I had to get out. So that was just part of it. Part of finding yourself again, being comfortable in your skin, realizing that you're not the center of everybody's universe. But it was a building process.
Sorry, so Clive,
Yeah.
when you was in the hospital, what was that like? Because I've never experienced it, and I'll be honest, it's such a taboo topic. I actually
Yeah, of
don't
course.
like when you instantly said that, I don't know why, but I went to like a movie that I've watched, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
everyone's strapped down to a table in a
yeah,
white room. Is
yeah,
that what it's like, or what
yeah.
is
Well,
it?
yeah, I would be exactly the same as you. Exactly the same. Thankfully, it's not as bad as that. Of course, there are areas like that, and things happen, and people are triggered, and I saw a lot of sort of people that had to be restrained and medicated and stuff if they were violent and things. That does happen. But no, I was, you know, you've got your own room. You've got a few basic facilities in there. You can't lock the door, obviously, but you wouldn't. Well, I certainly wouldn't have thought about doing that anyway. There's nurses. There's what look like security guards, and you're medicated. So the people are coming round sort of 2 or 3 times a day with various medications until they can get you on the right things and get you on what they think suits you and works for you. So during those first 2 weeks that I mentioned earlier, where I probably didn't appreciate exactly where I was, that's what they were doing. But then when you do, I mean, I went through every emotion from fear to confrontation and aggression I didn't have any incidents like that, but that's how I felt. Certainly felt like I was going to get into one of those situations daily because there's some very poorly people in there. But you're fully integrated. But thankfully, you see not just doctors, but you see psychiatrists, you see counselors, and they very, very slowly work out a treatment plan for you.
So you've gone through up until now. God, Imagine what you're feeling, that anxiety that just coming out of. I'm sorry, I'm getting lost for words a little bit, and that's not very common, Clive. But from the day you came out till up until this point where you're now trying to retrain yourself so that others don't, so that you don't feel like everyone, like all eyes on you, sort of thing, and you're trying to like decrease the anxiety and the stress and the mental health side of things. But who is Clive at that moment? So Clive before that was this confident, you know, gazer.
Yeah, yeah.
Who is Clive at that moment?
Vulnerable, and feeling inadequate, but thankfully feeling okay, so what can we do about this? And the journey up to that point, everything that had happened, the medical side, obviously then the mental health being compromised severely, but coming home and feeling safe again. I was fortunate that my mind was, what am I going to do about this, Clive? Because you've got all the love, you've got the support, you've got all that stuff. But ultimately the buck stops here and nothing changes till it changes. Nothing. What I did, Vish, was I was probably sitting in this very chair and I got a pad and a pen and I wrote down 12 times, hello, my name's Clive. I'm looking for some light gardening work or some maintenance work, and my phone number. And I put it in a nice envelope, homeowner. I got Alfie's bike, dusted it off, got it out the shed. And I can cycle as long as there's no sort of inclines, etc. This is exactly what I did. And I went out and I tried to find within about a mile, maybe 2 at the most, radius of my house, the biggest, poshest houses that I could find, thinking he's not cutting his grass and she's not cutting her grass. And in the letterbox. And honestly, at least 6 of them came back and said, I mean, some of them are elderly and this, that, and the other. Wow, yeah, we'd love to meet you. And I'm still helping them today, Vish. I've been in someone's garden today. I was in Southend doing a talk yesterday, but the day before that, I was in the garden. And I would not be without it. Honestly, I've got more keys and alarms and codes and stuff. I've met some wonderful people. My son introduced me to the world of podcasts and listening to music. And I just adjust and I adapt. And if there's things that I struggle with this year that I just change. There's nothing taboo. And I love it. I love it. It's you hear all the time about nature being healing, but if you can get back in tune with nature, if you can listen to the rhythm of nature, they don't have any laws or regulations. It does its own thing. It honestly, Vish, I would advise anybody, even if it's just getting outside for a short walk at lunchtime, and stay off your phone, apart from if you're listening to a podcast of this quality, of course.
Absolutely.
Then do it, because I can actively demonstrate that it really helps. So that was the first tangible positive thing that I did that has helped us all. It helps Dad, feel confident and like I'm doing something worthwhile. So that was the first thing that I did.
But where did you get that? Where did you get the idea from? Like, that seat looks absolutely wonderful, by the way. It looks so confident. It looks like one of those seats where you can just, proper daydreaming.
It is pretty deadly.
But where did you get that? Like, how does one go from, a mental health hospital to, I'm gonna go cut some grass. I'm gonna change. From all that anxiety of walking down an aisle in a supermarket and having people stare at you, which isn't happening, to I'm gonna pluck up the courage and knock on someone's door and go, here's a card, call me if you need me, or even just post it through the letterbox.
Yeah.
Clive, it makes no sense. How can one do that?
Well, I'm a firm believer, Vish, that positivity is a choice. And we don't even realize that sometimes ourselves, but it is. Am I feeling absolutely radiant and ready to attack the world every day? No, of course, I'm a human being. Of course not. I feel vulnerable and this, that, and the other. However, my positivity is not toxic. It's genuine. I want to be everything that I can be for my family, my friends, but also for me. I want to do things for me. So I thought I was here on my own. Obviously, the house was empty, and I thought, well, there's just no way. I am definitely need to do something. I need to start somewhere, and that was what came to my mind. That's what I felt that I could do. As I say, I couldn't drive. I didn't know how long I was going to be without my license. I've been driving since I was 17, so just that alone, you feel like you've lost your independence, but that's just what I wanted to do. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made, because I'm going to carry on with it for as long. Well, I just am. It's just fantastic. It really is.
That's incredible. Incredible. So how are you now? How are you with your disease? How are you with your mental health? Who is Clive today? Who is this geezer who's been through hell and back and kind of given the middle finger to life? Who is he today, and how is he today?
Yeah, yeah, that I do that. But I'm somebody that I am excited about the next chapter. I'm excited about what I can learn. I don't dwell on what I can't do. I want to learn and explore what I can do. And not just physically, I'm still very able, Vish. I'm very, very lucky. But that brought me to what I do now, because only about two summers ago, I was sitting in someone's garden, sitting on their wall, a sweaty mess, feeling slightly sorry for myself, thinking, as much as this is amazing, I need more. I've got a bit of a story to tell. I'm used to sharing. I cut my teeth by, as I said before, in my career with the MOD. So I'm a people person. I enjoy meeting people. But I thought, the way I feel and how confident I feel and open I feel, without doubt, I felt compelled to share, just in the hope that it might help people. But also, selfishly, I thought there might be a career in this. I might be able to do that. I'm honest. I wanted to provide for my family. So I'm a real technophobe, which is why I haven't been able to help you technically this evening at all. But I got my phone out. This is absolutely true. And I Googled how to become a public speaker. And that showed me speaker bureaus. Never heard of a speaker bureau before. And again, immediately, top 10 speaker bureaus in the UK. And I just dialed them. No preparation. Hadn't thought about this the day before or the hour before. And I got through. Vish, I vomited all this exuberance and all this stuff. And some of them were like, okay, Mr. Branson, that's great. We'll get back to you. But some of them were, okay, there could be something in this. And so from that, I'm now on, 8 or 9 sort of speaker bureau rosters. So I get to go all over the place, whether it be, a corporate room in London or whether it's a prison cell, of Cat A people. But whatever I do, I work with football teams, police forces. I'm working with Red Bull Racing at the moment. I've worked with Rolls-Royce, Adidas, all these people. So that's wonderful and that's amazing. But I needed to do something a little bit more heartfelt and a bit more personally rewarding. So I thought, who around this crazy country of ours, who are the audiences that might not get to hear somebody like me who is willing to share a real lived experience story? And I thought, well, the prisons. I had no idea how you get into working with them, but I just felt really strongly that, of course, there's bad people in prison. Of course there are. But there are an awful lot of people in prison that have just took a wrong turn, made a bad decision, and now they're paying for it. And quite often they're just written off. So it took me ages, Vish. I used emails, I used LinkedIn, I used trying to call, until a governor came back to me and said, okay, listen, come and meet me. If you're real and if you're genuine, come and talk to me. Tell me what you're looking for and we'll go from there. And it was actually a high security prison. It was Long Larton I think it comes under Warwickshire. But it's It's a real serious prison. And I went in and I met the governor. And once it became clear to him, I'm doing all this on a voluntary basis. You know, there's no fee, there's no speaker bureau. I feel passionate that I can help some of the people in here. And he said, wow, okay, now I know you're serious. He then opened the links to get me through security clearance that is required for an establishment like that. And I started working with across the country, all manner of levels of categories, from places like that through to the open prisons. And I share my story. I talk to large groups, small groups. I also work on the staff training days because they need encouragement as well. They're doing a really incredibly difficult job. And I can tell you now, Vish, that if you'd have said to me 10 years ago, Clive, you should try some volunteering, I'd have said, yeah, but I can't find the time, or, you know, all the usual excuses apply. I've learned that doing something for someone else when there's absolutely nothing in it for you, other than you're going to feel good about what you've done, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And that work I do with the prison service is really important to me. The people and the characters that I've met and the feedback, once they realize that, you know, obviously you don't go into details, but once they realize you're not just a paid speaker that's there as part of a training program, or I'm not there to preach or to spew a load of statistics out. I'm just Clive speaking with them, not at them. I'm sharing things. We're having a chat. We're talking about boxing, which is my biggest, or football or whatever. The feedback is breathtaking, and it really does do some good. So that's a big part of who I am now.
I love that. I love that. I love how you've managed to somehow, I can't exactly figure out how, but you have somehow managed to turn your whole life around through all the ups and all the downs. You've always somehow managed to stay positive and move forward. But Clive, one of the last questions I ask, and I ask everyone, and I want to ask you as well, is on a serious note, like with all my heart, I really want to know, how are you?
That's a wonderful question, mate. I am absolutely spiffing. I really, really am. I fully appreciate the art of gratitude. I remind myself, as I said earlier, that I love and I am loved. I'm excited about life. Are there challenges? Of course. Do I still have to work on my mental health? Of course. But how lucky are we? How lucky are we that we're sitting here talking about these things? How lucky am I to have met you, somebody who is off the same page? You are a hardworking, honest guy who wants to help people, and we've met.
Stop it.
No, listen, it's true. Honestly, hey, I'm no big shot. I am Mr. Ordinary on the street, but let me tell you, I wouldn't be wasting my time or your time unless I thought that we were genuine and the intention is the same, and that's a blessing.
100%, mate. 100%. And honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Onward Shift podcast, because you're just like, you're such a nice person. You're just such a nice geezer.
Now you've got to stop it now.
But seriously, Clive, you're just a wonderful human being who's been through life, and fuck me, has it been hard. But I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy that your story is consistently being shared and listened to, because I can almost guarantee you, if you're anything like me, it's not about helping a million people on day one. It's about helping one person every single day. And your story is so courageous that I'm sure you will help one person every single day.
Well, with the help of people like you, mate, you know, hopefully collectively we will do just that.
Absolutely. But thank you so much for being on the podcast, mate. I really appreciate your time and appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Honestly, the more people we reach, the more support we can offer. And don't forget, Onward Shift isn't just a podcast. We've got a number of resources on our website, so please don't forget to check out www.onwardshift.com, where you'll find counsellors, keynote speakers, coaches, blogs, and so much more. Until next time, don't forget to keep having these important conversations.